You thought this was a reading vlog? You thought this was going to be me reading? How dare you? How dare you think this is a booktube channel? Ugh, all right, well, I wanted to be able to do this video to talk about the books that I've been reading this past, few weeks. I mean, it's the mid-month check-in, and I wanted to try to do like a vlog type thing where you can see me reading some of them. I might share some thoughts as I'm reading. And man, being a parent these last few weeks has been crazy. It was our son's 9-month mark. I almost said anniversary, but his 9-month mark of being born, and he has decided to, I don't know, start standing and being crazy. And so I couldn't get good shots with being comfortable in that situation with him just being a crazy guy. He's also going to bed later, so this is really late at night. So you get the casual Graham going on. And yeah, so anyways, let's jump in. What have I been reading this month? Well, we all know, of course, the books I wanted to do, but I finally did finish Frederick Bachman's My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell Me She Is Sorry. And you know what? It was really good. I enjoyed this book quite a bit, and it was a struggle in the beginning for me to really get into this book. It's more humorous. Well, I guess Frederick Bachman's always pretty funny. A Man Called Ove was pretty funny, and there's other stuff too, but this was supposed to be breaking my heart, and this didn't make me cry at all because it's more absurd and like magical realism. It's about this girl. Her name is Elsa. She is 8 years old, and her grandmother passes away in the story, and her grandmother's telling her about this magical world called Mianmos. And it's a place where it's the almost awake kingdom where you're falling asleep and you go to this magical world, and there's all these amazing stories involving like the lore of this kingdom. And so the premise of this book is Elsa, after her grandma dies, has to go give letters to different people that she lives with in her apartment complex, and she begins to realize slowly that they're connected to the stories of the world of Almost Awake. And that's the whole thing, is she's on this great scavenger hunt with her grandmother, and it's good. I really enjoyed. Frederick Bachman does a great job of just showcasing people's traumas and sadness and what they have to go to. And because you're reading this in the lens of an eight-year-old, it's very fascinating because it feels very lighthearted, even though there's really difficult conversations and there's healing and things of that nature, and there's tragedy and stuff. It was good. It's a good read. It didn't stray far from what Frederick Bachman has to offer. I liked it. It's just not my personal favorite. It's probably my least favorite of his work so far, but I still really enjoyed my time with it, and I'm glad I finally finished it because it just took me a really long time, and I don't know why, because I did thoroughly enjoy it. So I gave this, I believe, 3.5 stars out of 5, and yeah, that's how I felt about it. It was pretty good. It wasn't the best ever, and but you still really get a lot of good meanings and stuff for it. And if you're a Frederick Bachman fan, you'll really like it. So check it out. So that was my first book I was able to get done. That was my leftover from the April TBR. And then we kind of dove into crushing the May TBR. And so the first book I was able to finish was the Bromance Book Club. We just literally did a podcast about this, so you can, or not a well, we'll call it a podcast, sure. But you can check out the Bromance Book Club in another episode. It's literally yesterday's post. You can see it with my friend, the Bookish Daddy. And so we got to really talk in detail about this book. That's full spoiler, so I'll keep this spoiler free. But pretty much this follows Gavin Scott, who is a professional baseball player for the Nashville Legends, which is a fake baseball team. And his wife is threatening to divorce him. And pretty much in order to save his marriage, a group of alpha males, what they say, or guys come and be like, yo, you have to read romance novels with us because they teach us life lessons. And this book is hilarious. This is my first true romance category. I've read hybrids all the time that have been mixed with fantasy, but this is my first romance fiction novel. And I have to say, it's really good. I was thinking I was just gonna have, the spice throughout the whole entire story, but this does have it near the end. It's more of like a, hey, this is how the relationship's going type of deal, instead of just being crazy. And I I laughed so much. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed this book a lot. I had a lot of fun. It was a really easy read. I consumed it in like 2 days because I wanted to just keep reading the pages because of how fun it was. And the guys that are in the story are so good. There's a hockey player that's my personal favorite named Vlad. He plays for the Nashville Predators and he is hilarious. And there's just a great group of characters. And what's cool is this book is in 2 different perspectives. You're not just following Gavin's perspective, but you're following his wife as well. And her name is Thea, I believe. And so you're following both of their perspectives, and it's alternating, and you get to kind of understand their backstory quite a bit. And so it ends up also going about fixing your relationship in a really healthy manner. And I thought that was really cool. It wasn't just all jokes all the time, and was great. And the thing that's really cool is inside the book, they end up getting a novel. Let me see if it shows up here, if I can find it real fast. Anyways, in between some of the chapters, there is all of a sudden you are reading the actual book that Gavin is reading for book club. And so the author, Lisa K. Adams, wrote a fictional book in here that is giving him lessons of what he needs to know in his relationship. And it's actually really quite awesome. There we go. It is called Courting the Countess is the name of the fic novel. And she's actually apparently writing that novel as well. And so it was great. I highly recommend it. I give this 4.5 stars out of 5. Really enjoyed it. And join us for our book club. Next month, we'll be reading the second book, which is called Undercover Bromance. So go watch our little podcast/book club thing and then join us for next one. So it was a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to get into the second book, Undercover Bromance. This third book is one I'm just reading. I'm not done with it yet, but we have been reading. I've been doing a buddy read with Marissa Thoman of Life and Death, which is the gender-swapped Twilight, and I'm pretty far into it. I'm almost done. We've been reading like a chapter a day throughout the month, which has been really cool. And man, this is crazy actually. I am really enjoying that. There's nothing really different from Twilight, except everyone is just gender swapped. And so Bella is Bo, Edward is Edith, and plenty more characters. There's so many more characters. Alice is Alvin, I believe. Alice is Archie. And so there's just like different characters with kind of semi-different personalities, but you're literally reading Twilight the same. It's the same, except I think our perception's a little bit different because of the gender swap. Social norms are interesting because Edith feels much more endearing in this book than Edward does. Edward was a little bit creepy and stalkery, and even though Edith is doing the same things, and maybe it's because of my point of view or coming from like a perspective, like I'm reading in a guy's perspective, like she comes off less creepy. It's kind of more exciting. Maybe I actually understand the appeal of what Edward was now, because I'm like, oh, like if I had a girl that was obsessed with me and like all of a sudden in my room and stuff, I would be stoked too. And so I kind of get it now. Like I was a Team Jacob person, but now I'm like Team Edith because it's awesome. It's really, really cool to be able to read that in the story and have those different things. And then Bo feels a little bit more creepy. And I don't know if men are just creepy. Maybe we're just creeps. If you're watching this channel, I'm sorry I'm creepy, but it's really fascinating to be able to see the world differently of like what we put on them. And even though the story is not really changed, which is kind of nice to do that side-by-side comparison, it's just our aspect on society makes the read a little bit more fascinating. And Stephanie Meyer, of course, has her faults. Like there's a part where she's explaining someone with a buzz cut and she calls him a skinhead, and that's not good. Don't call people skinheads if they have a buzz cut. You know, that means something totally different, Stephanie Meyer. I'm enjoying it, and it's just kind of a fun like revisitation to the Twilight and to Forks, and I'm excited to finish it because I do hear that the ending is a little bit different than what the normal books are, and so I'm excited to see what that twist is. I got to read an indie book this month, and it was from our very first indie author showcase. I talked about a book called Shifting Threads. It was a sequel to Call of Blood, and you know what? It's cool. This is a fantasy novel. It has a little bit of romance in it, so it's a little bit of romantasy, but I was really worried when I first started reading this book because it went really, really, really fast. And it went fast through kind of like the build-up part. And so the beginning of this book pretty much Evelyn, who is our main character, has magic. She can talk to animals and she can be able to read their thoughts. And she's kind of hiding because society has massacred these magic people, and she's found. And so her home gets destroyed. The person she's living with, which is her uncle, gets killed, and she's on the run. And remember, she has to go to the king because she has a connection with him, and ends up in the kingdom of Mistfire. That is pretty much a sum up of the beginning. And it was a really kind of like, the writing style was super fast paced, very, very choppy, in my opinion. And I know the author watches the channel, and I'm sorry, but pretty much like I felt like I didn't have enough time to really love her uncle and like feel her emotion of her uncle passing. I felt like it just was like, I got to keep going so we can get to the city so that we can have the true story, because the true story really happens in the city, and then the pacing slows down. And so Evelyn, on her way there, runs into a griffin, and griffins were said to be extinct, and they end up becoming friends. And she ends up meeting someone else named Anneliek in the city as well, who also is a magic user, but he's more of emotional. And then that's kind of our second main character. And so they go through this grand adventure of growth, coming out of learning about vengeance and if it's good or not. There's kind of like this political, like, romance type stuff going on, where it's kind of courtships of people coming after Evelyn while she obtains feelings for Anneliek. And let me just make sure I'm saying his name right, because there is a list here to say his name. Anneliek. And so it's interesting. I loved it. It was really, really good after you pass that little beginning part that felt really rushed, but it also did a good job of setting up the world too. Like, I understand it's the first debut novel, it's an indie published author, and also like it made sure that the story kept moving, because it did have core information that was just blasted at me that made the story make a lot of sense. So this is a really fun read. I ended up having a really good time with it, and the characters ended up being on their own. Now, I'd recommend this book to if you like A Court of Thorn and Roses, the first one, especially like story pattern, then you would like this. You don't have the Beauty and the Beast like romance style thing going on, but you kind of have where it's like a familiar type story, and then near the end there's like a big shift where you have to like, the character comes out of trials. So anyways, I give this 4 stars out of 5, and it was awesome. Check it out, Call of Blood by Michaela B. Buchanan. The last book is, I'm not finished with it, but I have been reading Borne by Jeff Vandermeer, and you know, this is hilarious so far. I was thinking this is going to be very dense because I know people are obsessed with the Annihilation series, and this might be funnier than that. That might be dense or a little bit whatever, but Jeff Vandermeer this is like intelligent humor. Like, I am thinking very scientifically as I'm reading this book, because things like the vocabulary on this guy is amazing, and the painting of the world is incredible too. It kind of feels like I'm in the world of Fallout, except instead of being nuked, there was like this company that kind of exploded and it mutated some of the wildlife, and so there's a bear that floats in the sky that's as big as mountains, is kind of what I'm picturing. And you can kind of see on the cover, there's like a shine to it. It's a picture of a bear. And so Borne was stuck in the bear's fur, and pretty much just like this weird sea anemone that all of a sudden like mutates and is pretty alien and begins to talk and kind of becomes the main character, Rachel's like child. And so you're kind of in her perspective so far, and that's kind of where I'm at so far in the book. And I think it's really charming and funny. Like, Borne is a funny character. Rachel has like this parent vibe to Borne, which is this weird alien thing, and I'm really digging it. I enjoy it, and it's a really good read so far. I'm so excited to be able to finish it. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at so far. I was able to finish, oh wait, there's one more book. There's one more book. So the book is A Court of Starlight and Frost, I believe is what it's called. And that is the 4th book, the like 3.5 book, kind of like this novella in the middle of A Court of Wings and Ruin and A Court of Silver Flames. So I was able to read that really, really fast. And I'm gonna be honest, It was like this weird Christmas Hallmark movie. Like, it was kind of like, oh, we're here and it's fun and there's presents and I got you a present. And then you're just kind of like, why am I reading this? I guess if he was a really big fan and I really cared, if I wanted to see my characters be happy, sweet. And then the book also was in different perspectives when usually it's from Feyre's perspective. But there was two characters that, of course, got really interesting. And that was Morgan. She has a little story arc going on that's pretty fascinating, and so I was kind of like, oh, that's cool. And then you have Nesta, you got her perspective for like 2 pages, and I was like, okay, this is just setting me up to really be excited about A Court of Silver Flames, because she has a lot going on mentally. That seems interesting. So yeah, that was probably the weakest of the series. It was still written well, I guess, but I just kind of was like, it's forgettable. I feel like I didn't really have to read it, and I probably didn't have to. I just wanted to make sure I read the whole series, and it was cool that they got to have a Christmas solstice Hallmark movie. So good job for doing that. I guess it's a cozy read inside this like fantasy thing. So there you go. I read that book, I don't know, like 3.5. I think I gave it. Maybe it was less, like 3. So somewhere around there. But yeah, that's what I read this past month. Thanks for joining me on the casual. Oh man, Mothman's down again. But thanks for joining me on the casualness of this couch. Thank you so much for watching and all your support on the channel. Literally, the growth of the channel has been huge. We're over 500 subscribers, which is awesome. Hope your night's awesome. And I hope you keep reading books. Talk to you later. Toodles!